Hello and welcome to CEMEX. My name is Jose Antonio Gonzalez and I am the CFO of the company, the Chief Financial Officer. At CEMEX, I am responsible for the corporate finance, controllership, which is all about financial reporting, legal, tax, and I also coordinate the process assessment function, which is internal audit, which reports directly to the board of directors. Those are my areas under my responsibility in the company. Our financials power CEMEX. They indicate how well we are performing and how much value we are delivering to our shareholders. Additionally, they influence how we run as an organization and the strategic initiatives we choose to pursue. I'm looking forward to talking about what our financials mean and how I see our organization growing financially in the coming years. Our profit model is actually quite simple, and we actually often joke about it at the executive committee. So our profit model consists of increasing our sales as much as we can, while at the same time reducing our cost as much as we can. So it sounds like a joke. In reality, if you are smart about it, you can actually influence a lot the results under this profit model. So take revenues, for example. Revenues is about growing our volumes. We sell cement, ready-mix aggregates, and a number of other ancillary products around the world, and we want to sell as much as we can. And also, we want to realize a fair but attractive price for our products. So that's why we joke sometimes about it, sell more and sell at a higher price. But when you're very smart about it, you can actually influence these variables quite a lot. Right now, the world is evolving at a very rapid pace, and the adoption of new technologies is transforming many things that we do in business. But we have decided to focus a lot on the customer experience. So one of the challenges we have aimed at affecting our revenue model, for example, is making sure that we are embracing the new technologies available, digital technologies, for example, so that we can deliver products while at the same time increasing or improving dramatically the experience a customer has in doing business with us. So the message is, going back to our revenue model, we want to increase our sales and we want to increase our prices, but we want to do it because we are delivering the best value proposition to our customers. So we can be very smart about it and actually influence this revenue model. In the case of our costs, we're a large organization. We run businesses around the world. So we have decided that it's all about standardization. We want to have the same operating model where we operate across the board. We want to ensure that we are transferring best practices around the world. So if somebody comes up with a very good idea as to how reduce, for example, our energy costs in a particular country, we immediately evaluate how much this can be replicated elsewhere. So in terms of our cost structure, I would draw your attention to two very important costs in our organization. One has to do with energy. We consume a lot of energy around the world because our product requires it. So we can be very smart about what kind of energy we use. Sustainability is at the core of what we do. So we want to make sure that we're burning clean fuels and that we are actually doing the best we can so that the impact that our products have are contained and limited. The other very important component of our cost has to do with transportation. We run a huge transportation fleet around the world, either our own fleet or with contractors. So we can be very smart about the way we run all our supply chain and our logistics, and there's tons of opportunity to optimize costs. So going back to the original question, our revenue model, our profit model is quite simple. Sell more and run your cost at the lowest possible. Our profit model, we sometimes joke about it, but it's actually quite simple. Sell as much as we can and do it with the lowest possible cost base. And it sounds like a joke because it's obvious, right? But actually there's a lot of thought going into how we can increase our sales and reduce our costs. So profit model, revenue. We sell three main products: cement, ready-mix, and aggregates. So it's all about increasing our volumes as much as we can while we get the best possible price out of our products. Now, the smarter that we get about it, the more we can be successful at increasing our revenue along these three variables. Right now, the world is changing dramatically with the adoption of new technologies, and we see a huge opportunity for us to take advantage of these new and developing technologies, embrace them, and make sure that we are delivering the best possible experience to our customers, such that whenever somebody who's building a project has a need for our products, they will first think about calling us because we offer the best possible solution. So that has to do with the revenue. And then our costs. Our costs, I would point you to two main factors as an example. No? One has to do with energy. The cement manufacturing process, as I'm sure you will learn in this onboarding, is intensive in energy. So we have to be very smart about what kind of energy we burn or we consume and where. And also, because sustainability is at the core of everything we do, we want to make sure that we are creating the least possible impact in terms of the environment. So energy is a very important cost component. And the second one has to do with transportation. We move lots of products around the world. When we think about transportation, think about thousands, literally thousands of trucks delivering our product or moving cement from the factory to distribution centers, etc. So if we're very smart about our logistics, and we also embrace the technologies available to us to improve and optimize our logistics and our supply chain models, we can actually optimize a significant amount of our cost. And the third thing I'd like to tell you about our model with regards to our cost is that we want to ensure that we are taking advantage of the best ideas across the company. That's why we have the global networks, which operate across all of our regions. And what this is about is very simple. It's making sure that whenever somebody has a good idea about how to reduce or optimize our energy costs or transportation costs, that we can immediately evaluate this idea across the organization in the countries where we operate and make sure that we deploy it if it makes sense for this to be deployed. So in summary, our profit model is very simple. Sell more at the lowest possible cost. And there's many ways to do it, being smart and increasing the profits that we make under this profit model. I would point you to a couple of very important indicators, perhaps maybe 3 or 4. Number one is EBITDA. EBITDA is a metric that we use quite intensively in CEMEX. It is a metric that measures all our revenue minus all of our costs at the operational level. And it's a very useful metric because since we run standard definitions and accounting methodologies around the world, it is a metric that we can easily use to compare one operation against the other. So EBITDA is a very important metric in the company, and I'm sure you will listen to it very frequently. The next one would be free cash flow. Free cash flow is the mother of all metrics. Free cash flow is very important because it is the money left over after the company has covered all of its expenses, including financial expenses and its capital expenditures. So basically it's taking our EBITDA and reducing the amount of interest we pay on our debt, the amount of capex we need to maintain our asset base operating efficiently, the amount of capex we need to spend every year, the amount of resources we need to deploy to working capital, and a few other items. So the amount of free cash flow left over is the amount of money we have that we can do a few things with it. One is to reinvest in the business, and it is our job to find attractive investment opportunities so that we can redeploy that excess cash and create more value to our shareholders. The second one is to reduce our debt. And the third one, of course, very important, is to return cash to our shareholders via dividends or share buybacks. We have not done a lot of that in the past, but that is something that we have been increasingly discussing in public forums and with shareholders as something that we would like to eventually implement in CEMEX. That's one metric. That's another metric, free cash flow. So we talked about EBITDA and free cash flow. Another metric that it is also very important for the company, it is the CVA, or the cash value added. This is a metric we also use to evaluate the performance of our businesses around the world. It basically consists of taking a measure of profits, similar to EBITDA, but we also have to subtract depreciation and amortization and also take into account our taxes that we pay, for example. And we have to take that against the cost of our asset base. So we run an important asset base around the world, which is backed by capital. And this capital has a cost. We pay interest on our debt and our shareholders expect a return. So we take all that asset base, use a metric called our cost of capital to come up with what is the cost of that capital, the capital charge, and we take that against the economic profits. And whatever is left over, and hopefully it is a positive amount, is the cash value added. And I think those are the major metrics that I would like to mention at this stage. I would like to describe 4 metrics that we use to measure financial health. The first one is EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. This is a very, very common metric that we use in CEMEX because it allows us to, one, have a good measure of operating cash flow, the amount of cash that the company is generating from an operational standpoint by taking revenues and subtracting all the costs, operational costs. But also it's a metric that allows us to compare performance in a consistent manner from one country to the other, from one operation to another in many countries around the world. So by having a consistent metric that measures profits in cash that the company is generating, we are able to make a lot of comparisons, and that is a very useful tool to keep track of business performance. So EBITDA is a very important metric for the company, and you will hear about that a lot. Second, and perhaps even most important, is free cash flow. Free cash flow is a very important metric as well because it represents the amount of resources that are left over after the company has taken care of all of its requirements. So taking first the operational profits that we generate, and then we subtract the interest expense that the company needs to pay on its debt, the CapEx, the capital expenditures that the company needs to make both for maintaining its existing asset base in good order and also for expansion whenever we need to make expansions around the world. Also, we need to take into account under this metric the investment that we make in working capital, and sometimes it can be positive and sometimes it can be negative depending on where a particular business or the company is at the stage in optimization of working capital, for example. No? And there's a few other components that go into that, but the amount of money left over is a very important indicator because it is basically the amount of resources available for 3 very important things or options. Number 1 is money left over for reinvesting in our business, going into new markets or building new cement factories or growing our asset base. Number 2 is money left over to reduce our debt or to continue paying our debt. And it is very important from a financial health standpoint to be able to pay a portion of your debt every year. And number 3, it is also money available that we can have for returning to shareholders via, for example, dividends or share buybacks. So free cash flow is another very important metric that we keep track of at the company. Then I would also talk about CVA or cash value added. This is also a very important metric that we use to measure not only the performance, but also the economic health of all business units across the company. And this metric basically takes into account, on the one hand, the profits that the company is generating, similar to EBITDA, but we also take into account or subtract from EBITDA depreciation and amortization, taxes primarily. And then we subtract the cost associated with our asset base. So we have a significant asset base, factories, mobile equipment, etc. And that asset base is provided by capital, and this capital has a cost. For example, it's a combination of debt and equity provided by our shareholders. So we have to take into account our asset base, apply a capital charge, which is the cost of capital, and the amount of money left over is the cost associated with our asset base, which has to be subtracted from the profits that I mentioned earlier. No? So when you subtract one from the other, the profits minus the capital charge, the result is the cash value added, and hopefully it is a positive number. And lastly, I would mention return on capital employed. It is relatively similar in concept to CVA. It is basically taking the operating profits also of the company divided by the asset base. So it is a little bit of a different way to look at CVA, and of course, the higher the return on capital employed, the better. And the aim is to have a return on capital employed which is higher than our cost of capital. In 2008, the world went through a very deep economic downturn and financial crisis. Many companies suffered greatly as we saw demand for products plummet and a deep sense of financial instability hitting financial markets. and Cemex was no exception. It was a long time ago, and we like to think that these are days that are behind us now, and now it's all about the future. But of course, it is always useful to reflect on past experiences to ensure that we learn and we take into account of what came out of all of this. No? So the financial crisis affected the company, and it is a very good example of how this company operates under a crisis. Companies around the world are exposed to crisis from time to time, and when you have a crisis, it is when you have to make sure that the best comes out. And not only my team, but the whole company had to adjust to the realities of the crisis. We had to take difficult decisions to reduce the scope of many businesses around the world because demand had plummeted. And we took the right decisions, and we took them quickly. And we were very transparent in communicating it both internally and to our external audiences. In fact, many people who watch and follow Cemex have commended Cemex for how it dealt with a very difficult situation. So it is important. So I would stress those days are behind us. It's now all about looking at the future, but we also have to sometimes reflect on what we learned and what we can apply in the future in difficult times again. How did my team, the teams working under the finance function perform? Well, on the one hand, we had a very challenging task of dealing with our financial situation. We had an important amount of debt, while the level of profitability was declining because the demand was declining around the world. So we had to engage in a very difficult process with our financial institutions, with banks, in order to refinance our debt, to be able to push maturities out and get more time to deal with the crisis and ensure that the company would meet all of its obligations. Now, sitting here today in the year 2018, although it has been a long period because the crisis started in 2008, we are now completely out of the woods. In fact, we have reduced our debt substantially. We have refinanced our debt a number of times. We have reduced dramatically our financial expense. And we are very close to getting to our objective, which is to recover an investment-grade credit rating. In fact, we are only 2 notches away from recovering our investment grade, and it's just a matter of time. We need to ensure that we keep we keep on paying our debt and we grow our profits. And in a matter of time, we will be where we want to be in terms of our credit rating, which is investment grade. And then the company will be, let's say, ready for writing the next chapter in the story, which I'm sure is going to be a very exciting chapter because it's all going to be about growth, about how we embrace new technologies, to be able to deliver superior customer to our customers, superior experience to our customers, and also about how we explore accessing new markets where we are not operating right now that offer huge growth potential going forward. I am actually very excited about the future prospects of the company. Having worked all these years to ensure that the company increases its financial flexibility, being in a position now where the company is generating year in and year out around $1 billion or more in free cash flow, and with a breadth of opportunities around the world for new investments, new markets for Cemex, where we can see a lot of growth. This is all very exciting. If you look at markets around the world, the degree of urbanization that is happening is huge. Many people that predict the future point to the establishment of many, many cities around the world with more than 5 million, more than even 8 million, 10 million inhabitants. Imagine all this urbanization, all the requirements that they will create in terms of infrastructure, housing, roads, bridges, hospitals, etc. All of this is a tremendous opportunity that we have for 2 things. Of course, to increase our business, but also to impact our world in a positive way, to impact our world by being the company that delivers the best solutions for the best cities around the world. This all sounds very exciting, and it's, from a business standpoint, a great challenge to have. And I'm sure that the team that we have here, the financial flexibility that we have built over the last years, and the drive that we all have in this company is going to help us position ourselves such that we can take advantage of these very attractive opportunities, of shaping the way the future will look like in terms of urbanization, development, and buildings around the world. I actually enjoy a lot of things about my role in the company and about the company. But first and foremost, I would tell you that it's all about the people. I enjoy working with my peers. Of course, I enjoy working with Fernando, our CEO. But I think we have a very functional executive committee. I think we really work together as a team. We are really looking for ways to complement each other's responsibilities and to contribute to the main objective, which is to ensure that CEMEX thrives in its industry. I also am extremely proud of the teams that conform the functions that I oversee in the company. We are privileged in this company to have professionals in all of our fields that we have. And not only all these people that work at CEMEX are very strong technically and professionally, but they're also very interesting persons. And it's always very interesting and very rewarding to be able to come in every day and sit down and get to work with people who are very professional, very passionate about what they do, and they're also very nice people to work with. Of course, we are not free of conflict. Sometimes conflict arises, but it is very nice that we're all very mature about how to deal with these conflicts and move on to the next one, or to the next challenge, not to the next conflict. So that's what I enjoy most about working with CEMEX. And I talked about dealing with people internally. I'm also very privileged to be able to take care of or to work with external audiences as well. No? Our banks, our rating agencies, for example. And again, this is a very privileged position to be in because CEMEX enjoys a great reputation in this kind of markets, because it is a company that has proven to be very responsible about how it conducts its business and to be very responsible in terms of committing and delivering all of its commitments, and that creates a very favorable and very positive reputation that is very valuable in the market. So it's very challenging and very rewarding at the same time to somehow be the bearer of this reputation, and it's a huge responsibility, and we all take it very seriously. So we want to ensure that everything we do enhances or works towards enhancing the reputation with our external audiences, which in turn we can feel from their feedback, and it's also a very rewarding to be able to work with all these external audiences as well. No? I hope you have enjoyed learning about CEMEX and our financials and the role that they play in the managing of this company. If you would like to learn more about this topic, I encourage you to talk to your supervisors. And also look at our financial reports. In our website, you can find a breadth of financial reports. And they're actually quite interesting. And by following them, you can keep track of how the company is doing, what are the main challenges that we are facing, and how we are explaining this to our many stakeholders. So please make sure that you keep up to date with the company and get close to your supervisors, ask all the questions, because the better informed we all are, the better we are prepared and equipped to do our jobs every day. Thank you very much.